The moment that scalding coffee hit my wife's arm, I saw red. Everyone froze. The flight attendants, the passengers, even Karen herself. She thought we were just another couple she could bully for a seat. What she didn't know was that she just picked a fight with the wrong man. I've been on hundreds of flights in my life. But that morning, as sunlight poured through the airport glass and my wife tucked her boarding pass into her bag, I had no idea this would be the one flight I'd never forget. Not because of the destination, but because of who was sitting 3 rows behind us. The day started simple enough. A red-eye from Denver to Miami. My wife, Lily, loved window seats. She'd always lean her head against the glass and fall asleep before takeoff. I booked them months in advance, like always. We were heading to a small aviation conference where I'd be speaking about sustainable airport operations. But to anyone looking at us that morning, we were just another couple traveling coach. The terminal was buzzing with tired travelers clutching coffee cups and neck pillows. The PA system echoed with the usual chaos. Final boarding for Flight 247 to Miami, Gate 18A. I smiled at Lily. That's us. She adjusted her scarf and laughed softly. Let's hope this flight's peaceful. No crying babies this time. I should have known then. Fate was already laughing at us. We walked down the jet bridge, the hum of engines growing louder. The cabin air smelled faintly of coffee and new upholstery. Flight attendants smiled the practiced smiles of people who've seen it all. We found our seats, 14A and 14B, and stowed our bags overhead. As I sat down, I noticed a woman a few rows ahead, mid-40s, blonde bob, designer purse, sharp sunglasses she refused to remove indoors. She was arguing with a flight attendant, her voice already slicing through the soft cabin chatter. "Ma'am, your seat is 17C, the attendant said politely. The woman scoffed. That can't be right. I always sit by the window. I glanced at Lily, who raised an eyebrow. Here we go, she whispered. The woman, who I'd later come to know as Karen, though that wasn't her real name, waved her boarding pass like a weapon. Do I look like a middle seat kind of person? She snapped. The attendant, bless her patience, kept smiling. I'm afraid that's what's on your ticket. You're welcome to switch if another passenger agrees. Karen's eyes darted around the cabin, hunting for prey. She spotted an elderly man settling into 17A. Excuse me, sir, she said, stepping into his personal space. Would you mind swapping seats? I need the window. The old man blinked. I prefer the window myself, ma'am. Karen's smile tightened. You prefer it? Or do you need it? Before he could answer, another attendant intervened, gently steering her back toward her assigned seat. The rest of the passengers tried to ignore the scene, burying themselves in phones or magazines. But I could feel the tension spreading, that uncomfortable energy that tells you something worse is coming. Lily leaned over and whispered, Please don't get involved. I smiled. I'm not. Not yet. Boarding continued. People shuffled in, overhead bins filled, seat belts clicked. The pilot's calm voice came over the intercom. Good morning, folks. We'll be taking off shortly once we get clearance from tower control. For a moment, things seemed normal. Then, a shadow fell across our row. Karen stood in the aisle, glaring at Lily. Excuse me, she said sharply. Lily looked up. Yes. Karen crossed her arms. You're in my seat. I blinked. Your seat? Yes, she snapped. 14A window seat. That's mine. I took a slow breath. I think you might be mistaken. She thrust her boarding pass toward me, smirking. See? 14A. I looked at it. 17C, clearly printed. Ma'am, I said, handing it back. You're in row 17. Karen frowned, then looked up at the row numbers above the seats, realizing, finally, that she was 3 rows too early. Her face flushed. Well, she huffed. It's an easy mistake to make. No problem, Lily said kindly, smiling. Travel can be stressful. Karen's eyes flicked over her like she'd just been insulted. Yes, well, some of us travel often. She turned to go, but not before muttering, just loud enough to hear. People like you always take the best seats. Lily's smile faded. I clenched my jaw. Karen strutted back to her row, tossing her purse into the seat with exaggerated flair. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, my blood just a little warmer now. The flight attendants gave their safety demonstration, though half the passengers weren't paying attention, Karen included. She was busy complaining to her seatmates about how unfair airline seating had become. Back in my day, she said loudly, You could just ask for what you wanted. The man next to her nodded awkwardly. The universal signal for, please stop talking to me. Lily placed her hand on mine. Let it go, she whispered. I nodded, exhaling slowly. She's not worth it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling this wasn't over. The way she'd looked at my wife, like she was beneath her, stuck in my head like a thorn. The engines roared to life, and the plane began its slow taxi toward the runway. Outside the window, dawn painted the clouds in streaks of gold. Lily smiled softly, resting her head against the glass. This view never gets old, she murmured. I smiled back, the tension easing. You earned it. The flight attendants took their seats, and the pilot's voice came again. Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff. The plane accelerated, wheels thundering against the tarmac, then lifted gracefully into the morning sky. For a few minutes, peace returned. But peace, I've learned, doesn't last long when entitlement's involved. About 20 minutes in, I heard it again, that same grating voice from a few rows behind. Excuse me. Excuse me. Karen was flagging down the flight attendant. Can I switch to a window seat? I can't breathe here. I need air. The attendant tried to soothe her. I'm afraid the flight is full, ma'am. Karen huffed loudly. Then someone can swap with me. It's a medical need. She looked around the cabin, locking eyes with Lily, the only available window in sight. Maybe she can move, Karen said, pointing directly at my wife. I turned slowly. My wife's fine where she is. Karen's lips curled. I'm sure she is. But I get claustrophobic, and she looks young and flexible enough to handle an aisle. The entire row went silent. Lily blinked, caught between disbelief and politeness. I'm sorry, but I really prefer the window. Karen's smile turned brittle. Of course you do, she said, venom slipping through her tone. The attendant intervened again, apologizing profusely and asking Karen to remain seated. Karen rolled her eyes, muttering something about rude millennials and people with no manners. I said nothing. Not yet. But the air felt different now, thicker, charged. As the plane climbed above the clouds, I stared out at the horizon, sunlight scattering across the wing. Lily leaned against me, eyes closed again. I wanted to believe the worst was behind us, that the rest of the flight would pass quietly. But somewhere behind us, I heard the hiss of a coffee lid snapping open, and Karen's voice, low and sharp. I'll teach her to steal my seat. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, steady, calm, deceptive. The kind of sound that makes you forget you're thousands of feet above the earth. But behind us, that calm was already cracking. Karen hadn't stopped muttering since takeoff. Every few minutes, she'd sigh dramatically, or tap her tray table, or grumble about how unfair it was that she didn't get a window. The passengers around her had adopted the universal travel defense. Earbuds in, eyes down, pretending she doesn't exist. But she wasn't talking to them. She was talking to us. Lily pretended to nap, her head resting against the glass, sunlight glowing on her cheek. But I could tell she wasn't asleep. Her shoulders were tense, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Then it came, that voice again. Excuse me, miss? The flight attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, stopped beside her. Yes, ma'am. Karen gestured toward our row. That girl in the window seat. She's got her hair pressed against the glass. Isn't that unsanitary? The attendant blinked. Ma'am, the windows are cleaned between flights. Well, Karen huffed. She's smudging it. I can see it from here. I'd like to move there before she gets makeup all over the view. The attendant's professional smile flickered for half a second. I'm afraid those seats are taken, ma'am. Karen leaned back dramatically. Of course they are. They always are. I caught her reflection in the seat monitor, that thin, tight-lipped smile of someone who thought the world owed her a crown. Lily whispered without opening her eyes. She's not going to drop it, is she? I sighed. Not a chance. An hour passed. The seatbelt light went off. People relaxed, stretching, chatting, ordering drinks. The air felt lighter. Until Karen stood up. She walked down the aisle with the kind of confidence only entitlement can give. Chin high, purse tucked under her arm like a scepter. She stopped right beside our row. Lily stirred. Can I help you? Karen smiled. The kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. I was just wondering if you'd be willing to trade seats. You seem nice enough. Lily hesitated. I'm sorry, but I prefer the window. Karen's eyes narrowed. Do you prefer it? She leaned closer, voice dropping to a condescending whisper. Sweetheart, People who travel as often as I do need certain comforts. You can't imagine how exhausting it is to sit in the middle, shoulder to shoulder with strangers. I spoke before Lily could. Then maybe you should have booked business class. Karen turned toward me slowly, like a cobra spotting its next move. Excuse me. You heard me, I said evenly. We paid for these seats. You didn't. Her fake laugh pierced the air. Oh, please. Don't act like you own the plane. Lily gently tugged at my arm. Let it go. But Karen wasn't done. She folded her arms. I bet you think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Sitting there, taking the best seat, while people like me. Like you what? I asked quietly. People who actually deserve comfort get shoved in the middle. There it was. The truth dripped from her voice, not about the seat, but about power. This wasn't about comfort. It was about control. The attendant rushed over again, trying to calm the situation. Ma'am, please return to your seat. Karen shot her a glare sharp enough to cut steel. Do not talk to me like I'm some toddler. I'm a paying customer. The attendant stayed calm. Everyone here is, ma'am. Karen's jaw twitched. Then why is she getting special treatment? She's not, the attendant replied. She's just sitting in the seat she booked. Karen's composure cracked. You know what? I don't have to put up with this. She turned abruptly and stormed back toward her row, but not before brushing against Lily's arm hard enough to spill her drink. Hey, Lily gasped, grabbing a napkin. Karen didn't turn around. Maybe next time, hold your cup properly. I felt the anger rise, fast and hot, but I kept it buried. Barely. For the next 30 minutes, I tried to focus on anything else. The clouds outside, the movie playing silently on the screen, the hum of the engines. But all I could see was that smirk. Then, halfway through the flight, the seatbelt light blinked back on. A little turbulence. Nothing serious. The flight attendants paused drink service, securing carts as the plane jolted slightly. A few gasps filled the cabin. And through it all, the shaking, the bumps, Karen's voice somehow cut through again. This is ridiculous. How hard is it to fly smoothly? I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Lily squeezed my hand. You're doing good, she whispered. Don't give her the satisfaction. But I could feel it, the calm before the storm. Karen wasn't just loud. She was plotting something. When the turbulence eased, people started relaxing again. Coffee orders resumed. Laughter returned. And then it happened. A scream. Not of pain, but of shock. Hot coffee splashed across the aisle, directly onto Lily's sweater. She gasped, jerking upright. What the? Karen stood there, paper cup in hand, her lips pursed in mock innocence. Oh my goodness, she said sweetly. I tripped. The turbulence, you know. Steam rose from the coffee, soaking into Lily's sleeve. Her hand trembled, but she didn't speak, just looked at the woman, stunned. I stood up slowly, my chair creaking. Karen took a step back, eyes narrowing. It was an accident. The attendant rushed over again, voice tight. Ma'am, please sit down. Karen interrupted, her tone icy and loud. Don't you dare accuse me of anything. I spilled my drink, that's all. If she can't handle a little coffee, maybe she shouldn't hog window seats. The cabin went silent. Even the hum of the engines seemed quieter. Lily was shaking, blotting her sleeve with napkins. The attendant helped her while glaring at Karen. Ma'am, she said firmly, this behavior is unacceptable. Please return to your seat immediately. Karen scoffed. Unacceptable? I said it was an accident. I stepped closer, not angry, not shouting, just calm, controlled. An accident happens once, I said quietly. You aimed. Her face went pale. Excuse me. I leaned in slightly. You heard me. You didn't trip. You threw it. She laughed, too loud, too forced. You can't prove that. I smiled thinly. Maybe not. But cameras can. Her laughter died instantly. She blinked. Cameras? I pointed subtly toward the bulkhead, the tiny dome lens just above the aisle. Federal regulation. Every cabin on this fleet has surveillance. Her confidence faltered for the first time. You're lying. The attendant looked at me, realizing what I was doing, and played along. No, ma'am. He's not. Karen's bravado crumbled. She stepped back, clutching her bag. This is ridiculous. You people have no idea who you're dealing with. I smiled again, the edge in my voice like ice. You'd be surprised who you're dealing with. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? But before I could answer, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, Please remain seated as we experience minor turbulence. Karen scowled, turning toward her row, muttering under her breath the whole way. The attendant leaned close to me. Sir, I'll make a report of this. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. I nodded, sitting back down beside Lily. She was quiet, still shaken but steady. You okay? I asked softly. She gave a small nod. Yeah, just can't believe she did that. I took her hand. She'll regret it soon enough. Outside, the clouds drifted like silent witnesses. Inside, the cabin returned to uneasy stillness, but the balance had shifted. Karen thought she'd just picked a fight with another passenger. What she didn't know was that she'd just picked one with the man who owned the sky she was flying through. The coffee stain on Lily's sleeve had started to dry, but the memory of it burned hotter than ever. Passengers had seen what happened. They'd just pretended not to. The way people do when decency demands they look away. Karen sat 3 rows behind us, muttering to her seatmate like nothing had happened. Every few minutes, I caught bits of it. She was asking for it. Some people don't know their place. My jaw clenched. Lily squeezed my hand again, not to comfort me, but to stop me. She knew that look. I wasn't angry because of the coffee. I was angry because of the disrespect. A flight attendant approached quietly, kneeling beside us. Sir, ma'am, are you both okay? Lily nodded faintly. I'm fine, just a bit startled. The attendant frowned. We've noted the incident. The captain's been informed. Karen must have overheard, because her voice sliced through the cabin again. You told the captain? Oh, for heaven's sake. What's he gonna do? Land the plane? The attendant stood tall, her professional calm slowly giving way to quiet authority. Ma'am, you need to lower your voice. Karen smirked. You need to learn who you're talking to. Her seatmate, a nervous-looking man with earbuds half in, whispered, Ma'am, maybe just stop. She glared at him. Mind your business. The attendant turned to me and Lily. We'll handle it. Please sit tight. I nodded. Thank you. I appreciate it. She moved up the aisle, whispering something to another crew member before disappearing into the cockpit. Lily leaned in. You told her who you are? I shook my head. Not yet. She sighed. You're planning something, aren't you? I smiled faintly. Let's call it turbulence of justice. 15 minutes later, a calm but firm voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing light turbulence. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. The plane dipped slightly. A few gasps filled the cabin. Karen grabbed her armrest dramatically. Oh, wonderful. First a window thief, now a pilot who can't drive straight. A ripple of murmurs passed through the rows. The captain continued, unbothered. Cabin crew, please remain seated for the time being. But the truth was, the turbulence wasn't what had everyone tense. It was her. Every flight has that one person who makes everyone silently unite in irritation. Karen had become that person, and she didn't even know she was seconds away from learning exactly how far her arrogance would get her. The cockpit door opened. The head flight attendant, a composed woman with years of experience written in her posture, approached Karen's row. Ma'am, the captain would like a word when we land. Karen blinked. Excuse me? A word? For what? For passenger safety concerns, the attendant said calmly. Karen laughed, sharp, defensive. Oh, this is ridiculous. I was the one splashed with coffee. She just happened to be in the way. The attendant didn't flinch. Ma'am, the captain will review the cabin footage when we land. Karen froze. Footage? Yes, the attendant said smoothly. FAA policy. Every modern fleet records in-flight disturbances for safety review. Karen's eyes darted around, realizing the passengers were watching. She forced a laugh. Oh, please. You think I care about your little videos? But her voice trembled, just slightly. Lily leaned close to me, whispering, You really should tell them who you are. I nodded slowly. Soon. Half an hour later, the turbulence cleared. The cabin lights dimmed for the evening flight mood lighting, a soft amber glow brushing over the rows. Most passengers settled in. Karen didn't. She pressed her call button again, and again, and again. Finally, a weary attendant returned. Yes, ma'am. Karen pointed down the aisle. I'd like that man and his wife moved away from me. They're making me uncomfortable. The attendant blinked. You mean the couple in row 14? Yes, Karen snapped. They keep whispering. It's creepy. Ma'am, they're simply talking quietly, the attendant said. Karen leaned forward, voice dropping into venom. You have no idea who you're protecting, do you? The attendant frowned. Excuse me. I know important people, she said, smirking. I could have your job with one phone call. The attendant hesitated, not from fear, but disbelief. I'm sorry you feel that way, ma'am. Karen's grin widened. Sorry won't save your career. That was it. Enough. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood slowly. The hum of the cabin fell silent again. Karen turned, clearly pleased with herself. Oh look, he does speak. I smiled faintly. Only when it matters. The attendant looked uneasy. Sir, it's okay. No, I said gently. It's time. Karen folded her arms. Time for what? Another lecture about manners from coach class. Lily touched my wrist. Be careful, she whispered. I looked at her and smiled. Calm, collected. I promise. Then I turned back to Karen. Ma'am, I said clearly, so the entire cabin could hear. I'm sorry you're unhappy with your seat, the service, or, well, the entire human race. But since you keep mentioning people who can make calls, let's test that theory. Her eyebrows knitted. What are you talking about? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small black leather badge holder. The gold wings inside caught the cabin light perfectly. Her smirk faded instantly. What is that? Federal Air Marshal identification, I said evenly. And you've officially crossed the line from rude to disruptive. A collective gasp spread through the cabin. Karen's mouth fell open. You're lying. The attendant backed me up immediately. Ma'am, please remain seated. Karen's eyes darted wildly between us. You can't be serious. You're one of them. Not just one of them, I said calmly. I also happen to sit on the advisory board of the Federal Aviation Infrastructure Council. She blinked, confused. What? The organization that oversees safety compliance in 62 major airports, including this one. Her face went white. You could almost hear the gears grinding in her head as the weight of that sank in. Passengers turned in their seats, whispering. A few actually started recording. Karen sputtered. You can't. You wouldn't. I cut her off gently. I won't do anything, ma'am. But the footage will. The attendant leaned in. Ma'am, please stay calm while we secure a report for landing. Karen's breathing quickened. You don't understand. I didn't mean. I just. It's fine, I said, my tone soft but final. You'll have a chance to explain it on the ground. She sank back into her seat, trembling, muttering something about misunderstandings and wrong people to mess with. I turned back to Lily, sat down, and fastened my seatbelt again. Her eyes met mine, half shock, half admiration. You really waited for the perfect moment, didn't you? I smiled. Timing's everything at 30,000 feet. The next hour passed in uneasy quiet. No more insults. No more muttering. Just the steady sound of the engines and the occasional ding of the intercom. When the captain finally announced, Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent into Miami shortly. A quiet wave of relief swept through the cabin. The same flight attendants who had endured Karen's tantrum exchanged small smiles as they walked past. And behind us, Karen sat perfectly still, arms crossed, sunglasses back on, as if hiding behind them would erase what just happened. But it wouldn't. Not when the landing report would include one very specific note. Incident documented. In-flight aggression toward passengers and crew. Subject warned by Federal Air Marshal. As the wheels touched down and the engines roared in reverse thrust, I felt Lily's fingers lace through mine. You handled that perfectly, she whispered. I smiled. Dad always said, never argue with arrogance. Just let gravity do the work. She laughed softly. Gravity? Yeah, I said, glancing back at Karen's hunched posture. The higher they think they are, the harder they fall. When the plane's wheels hit the Miami runway, the cabin erupted in applause. One of those instinctive, nervous reactions passengers give when relief outweighs fear. But for one person on board, the landing wasn't a relief. It was Judgment Day. Karen hadn't spoken a word since my reveal. She sat rigid in her seat, jaw clenched, sunglasses on even though the cabin lights had brightened for arrival. Every few minutes, she adjusted her posture, like she was trying to reclaim a sense of control she'd already lost. As the aircraft taxied toward the gate, the intercom chimed. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we've reached the gate, and the captain turns off the seatbelt sign. Lily looked at me, whispering, Do you think she's scared? I gave a faint smile. Scared people talk. She's quiet. That's worse. Karen's reflection in the window showed the faintest tremble in her hands. She wasn't scared of me. She was scared of what I represented, accountability. The plane came to a stop. The familiar ding of the seatbelt light echoed. Instantly, passengers stood, stretching, opening overhead bins. But no one near Karen moved. They gave her space, like she carried some contagious arrogance they didn't want to catch. The lead flight attendant approached quietly. "Mr. Collins," she said softly, "the captain has asked that you stay seated for a few minutes. Security would like a quick word with you and your wife." Lily frowned. "Security?" The attendant smiled gently. "Standard procedure, ma'am. We have to document the incident." Karen overheard and snorted. "Oh, please. You're wasting everyone's time. I said it was an accident." The attendant turned toward her. "Ma'am, please remain seated until instructed." Karen crossed her arms. "You have no authority over me." I turned slowly. Actually, she does. And so do I. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Karen froze. The passengers nearby exchanged glances, quiet satisfaction glowing in their eyes. For months, maybe years, she'd probably gotten away with talking down to everyone she met. But not this time. Not at 30,000 feet, and not under federal law. The door opened with a hiss. Sunlight and humid Miami air rushed in. As passengers filed out, several nodded toward me. Small, silent gestures of respect. One man whispered, "Good job, sir," as he passed. Even the elderly man from row 17 gave a subtle thumbs up. Karen tried to follow the crowd, clutching her designer bag like a shield, but the flight attendant stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, please wait." Karen's voice pitched higher. "What is this, some kind of witch hunt?" "I told you it was coffee." "Ma'am," the attendant said calmly, "federal officers are boarding to speak with you." Her mouth fell open. "Officers? For coffee?" I couldn't help it. I smiled. "It's not about the coffee, Karen. It's about conduct." She spun toward me, eyes flashing behind her tinted lenses. "You set this up? You think because you wear a badge and hide behind regulations, you can humiliate me?" I leaned back slightly, voice low but firm. "No, ma'am. You did that all by yourself." The murmurs around us grew. Everyone had stopped pretending to look away. Phones tilted. Cameras blinked red. For someone obsessed with control, nothing cuts deeper than public exposure. 2 TSA officers entered the cabin, polite, professional, and completely unmoved by her theatrics. "Ms. Brooks," one said, "we need to speak with you regarding a passenger disturbance report." Karen's tone turned pleading. "You don't understand. I was provoked." She took my seat. "They were rude. They mocked me." The officer stayed calm. "Ma'am, we'll hear your statement at the terminal. Please gather your belongings." Karen hesitated, her pride wrestling with reality. Then, in one last attempt at defiance, she turned to me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You and your little wife. I know people." "Maybe," I interrupted softly, "but not at my airports." Her face twisted in confusion. "Your airports?" I nodded slowly. 62 of them, including this one. The entire cabin went silent. Even the air seemed to pause. Karen blinked, processing. "You own airports?" "I operate them," I said. "I chair the Global Airfield Alliance. The people you just disrespected, the attendants, the captain, the passengers, they're part of my system. And I protect my system." Her jaw dropped. "You're lying." I smiled faintly. "You really should stop saying that to people who carry badges." The TSA officer gave me a respectful nod. "We'll handle it from here, Mr. Collins." Karen sputtered. "This isn't fair. You can't treat me like some criminal." The officer's tone stayed even. "Ma'am, please exit the aircraft." She finally moved, muttering curses under her breath. When she reached the jet bridge, she spun around one last time, face red, voice shaking. "You think you're better than me." I met her gaze calmly. "No, ma'am. I just think you should have kept your coffee in the cup." Laughter rippled through the cabin. Not cruel, just cathartic. A release of collective tension. Karen stomped down the jet bridge, tripping slightly on her own bag strap. The officers followed close behind. When Lily and I finally stepped off the plane, the gate was nearly empty except for a few waiting passengers watching curiously as Karen's voice echoed faintly from the corridor. A supervisor approached, crisp uniform, kind eyes. "Mr. Collins? I just wanted to say, thank you for handling that as professionally as you did. The crew's already filed their report." I nodded. "They did great." Please make sure they're commended. Lily smiled softly. They deserve it. The supervisor grinned. They'll love hearing that from the man who literally signs their runway contracts. We all chuckled quietly. As we walked through the terminal, sunlight spilling across the polished floors, Lily finally let out the laugh she'd been holding. You really waited until the end to drop the I-own 62 airports line? I shrugged. Timing is everything. She smirked. That's going to live rent-free in her head forever. Good, I said. Maybe it'll teach her to check her attitude before her luggage next time. We passed a news screen showing flight updates and airport alerts. For a split second, I caught my own name scrolling at the bottom under Upcoming Aviation Conference Keynote Speaker. Lily noticed too and smiled. Guess she'll figure out the truth sooner than later. By the time we reached baggage claim, the terminal noise had faded into background hum. Wheels on tile, faint announcements, the clatter of luggage. Lily's hand brushed mine. You think she'll actually face charges? I nodded. Probably not. But she'll be flagged. Every airline she flies will have a note on her file. She raised an eyebrow. Like a travel blacklist? Exactly. Not banned. Just remembered. She laughed softly. Fitting. A familiar voice approached, the same flight attendant from earlier. Mr. Collins, ma'am. Just wanted to say goodbye. Lily smiled. You handled everything perfectly up there. The attendant grinned. Well, we don't get to quote FAA policy to an FAA official every day. I chuckled. Consider it practice. You did everything right. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Between us, the captain said you were the calmest air marshal he's ever seen. I winked. Gravity, remember? She laughed, nodded, and walked off. Later, as we stepped outside into the humid Miami air, the sun hit just right. Warm, golden, unbothered. I turned to Lily. You know, I think I finally understand why Dad loved flying so much. She tilted her head. Because it makes you feel free? I smiled. Because up there, truth always rises above the clouds. She grinned, looping her arm through mine. You sure you're not writing your own motivational posters now? I laughed. Maybe I am. Behind us, through the terminal glass, I saw Karen being escorted toward an office. Her hair was frizzed, her confidence gone. She glanced up just once, saw me watching, and looked away immediately. That was enough. No revenge. No shouting. Just accountability. Lily squeezed my arm. Ready to go? Yeah, I said, smiling. Let's find some real coffee. By the time Lily and I reached the hotel that night, we were too exhausted to talk about it anymore. The flight. The chaos. The woman who decided a window seat was worth a meltdown. We showered, ordered room service, and tried to let the day fade into silence. But silence didn't last long. My phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then nonstop. I frowned. That's weird. I've got 20 unread messages. Lily looked up from her plate. From who? I scrolled through. Reporters. Aviation staff. Even my assistant. She raised an eyebrow. What happened? Then the headline popped up. Passenger throws coffee during flight. Air Marshal steps in. The thumbnail was unmistakable. Karen mid-scream. A coffee cup midair, and me standing between her and the flight attendant. Someone had filmed everything. Lily gasped. Oh no. I tapped the video. It started with the chaos at 30,000 feet, her shouting, her threats, her arrogance, and then my calm reveal. Actually, ma'am, I'm a federal air marshal. The clip froze there, text appearing over the screen. Instant karma at 30,000 feet. It already had 2 million views. Within hours, the internet did what it does best. It turned outrage into spectacle. People clipped it, shared it, added slow-motion zooms and dramatic music. Every comment section said the same thing. Finally, someone stood up to Karen. He didn't even raise his voice. That's real power. She messed with the wrong passenger. I scrolled, half amused, half horrified. This is insane. Lily grinned. You're trending. Look, hashtag Air Marshal Dad, hashtag Coffee Karen, hashtag Window Seat War. I rubbed my temples. That's not exactly how I wanted my week to go. But part of me couldn't help but smile. Not for the attention, but for the truth finally being visible. The whole world had seen what arrogance looked like, and what restraint looked like standing next to it. By morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. CNN, NBC, even aviation podcasts, all wanted a statement. I ignored most of them, sipping my coffee while Lily read headlines out loud. Passenger learns the hard way why you don't argue at 30,000 feet. Air Marshal silences rude traveler with just one sentence. She laughed. You've gone viral for being polite. I smirked. That's a first. Then her tone shifted. Oh no. She held out her phone. Another headline. Identity of Coffee Karen confirmed. Local HOA president faces public backlash. I froze. She's an HOA president? Lily nodded, scrolling. Apparently, she runs the HOA for the Coral Ridge Estates. Her neighbors aren't exactly fans. The article quoted several residents. She fines people for leaving trash bins out 2 minutes late. She's always yelling at kids for playing near the sidewalk. Finally, karma got her. I leaned back, exhaling. Well, that explains the entitlement. Lily looked sympathetic, even for her. Still, it's brutal. People are posting her address. I frowned. That's not okay. She earned consequences, not harassment. Lily nodded. You're going to say something, aren't you? Yeah, I said softly. Someone has to draw the line. I opened my social media and typed slowly, carefully, not out of anger, but out of responsibility. Yes, I was on that flight. Yes, the incident happened as seen. No one deserves threats or harassment. Accountability isn't revenge. It's a reminder that respect still matters, even at 30,000 feet. I hit the post. Within minutes, it blew up again, but this time, it shifted the tone. People started quoting my line. Accountability isn't revenge. Lily smiled. That's going to end up on t-shirts, you know. I laughed. If it keeps one person from throwing coffee, I'll take it. A few days later, I got a call from the FAA. The investigator's tone was amused. Mr. Collins, you've made quite an impression. Your report's been reviewed, textbook response. Excellent de-escalation. I chuckled. Just another day in the skies. Actually, he continued, the airline wants to feature this as a training case. How to handle disruptive passengers. You're basically the new gold standard. Lily laughed from across the room. You're going to be in flight training videos now. I grinned. Perfect. Maybe they'll teach Karen's HOA about them too. Meanwhile, across the country, Karen's world was collapsing in slow motion. Clips of her shouting went viral on every platform. One neighbor filmed her HOA sign being taken down. Another posted, HOA president resigns after flight incident. But the most haunting video came from Karen herself, shaky, filmed in her car. Her voice cracked as she said, I didn't mean for things to go this far. I lost my job. My board voted me out. Everyone's turned on me. She paused, looking into the camera. I just wanted the window seat. The video cut there. No apology, no lesson. Just regret and disbelief that her own choices had consequences. Lily found it first and showed me quietly. Do you think she learned anything? I watched the clip twice. Maybe not yet. But she's feeling it. That's how lessons start. She nodded. You're kinder than she deserves. I smiled faintly. Maybe. But kindness is free. She can't take that from me. Lily leaned her head on my shoulder. You really don't change, do you? Not when it comes to respect, I said. The world's already got enough noise. We don't need to add more shouting. Weeks passed. The story finally started fading, replaced by the next viral moment, the next scandal, the next distraction. But every time I boarded a plane, I noticed something small, subtle, but powerful. Passengers smiled at each other more. People thanked the crew more often. Even when turbulence hit, nobody complained about seats or windows. Lily noticed too. You think your story did that? I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe people just remembered that kindness flies smoother than ego. She grinned. You should put that on your next keynote slide. I laughed. I just might. A month later, I was invited to speak at the International Aviation Ethics Conference. As I walked onto the stage, the room filled with pilots, attendants, and airport executives, the people who keep the world moving quietly behind the clouds. I began my speech with a single sentence. The difference between authority and arrogance is how you treat people who can't fight back. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was deep, the kind that comes from understanding. And as I glanced at Lily in the audience, smiling proudly, I realized something. That flight wasn't just a story of confrontation. It was a story of control, how losing it reveals who you really are. Later that night, as we walked back to our car, Lily said softly, You turned chaos into wisdom. I chuckled. Or just turbulence into teaching material. She smiled. Either way, it's poetic. We paused by the runway. lights glowing across the night sky. A jet roared overhead, sleek, steady, unstoppable. I watched it disappear into the darkness and whispered to myself, even when people throw coffee at you, just keep flying. 3 months later, the world had moved on. The memes faded, the hashtags quieted, and the story of Coffee Karen versus Air Marshal became just another viral memory buried under newer chaos. But for me and Lily, life hadn't slowed. Business trips, conferences, airport visits, it was back to normal. Or as normal as life gets when half your face has been turned into a meme. Every now and then, a flight attendant would recognize me. "Sir, you're the guy from that flight, right?" I'd just smile and say, "Depends which flight you mean." They'd laugh, snap a photo, and thank me for standing up calmly instead of shouting. It became a quiet badge of honor. Not fame, just proof that grace still worked in loud rooms. That day started like any other business trip. A flight to Denver for a new hangar inspection. Same terminal, same crew uniform, same caramel latte from the same airport cafe Lily always teased me about. She kissed me goodbye at security. "Try not to end up on the news again." I chuckled. "No promises." She smiled. "Love you. Love you too." Boarding was smooth, uneventful. Just the hum of jet engines and the quiet chatter of passengers finding their seats. I stowed my bag, checked my email, and leaned back. Then, halfway down the aisle, I saw her. Karen. No sunglasses, no smirk, no entourage, just a tired woman clutching a carry-on and avoiding every eye that dared glance her way. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back simply. Her makeup was faint. Her posture, smaller. For a second, she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes lifted and froze. Our gazes locked. And in that instant, both of us were back in the sky. The coffee, the shouting, the silence after. She swallowed hard and looked away, her face pale. I said nothing, just watched quietly as she walked past and found her seat, 2 rows ahead. Middle seat. The irony didn't escape either of us. The plane filled. Engines roared to life. As we climbed through the clouds, I opened a report, but my focus was gone. I could feel her presence, uneasy, restless, flicking through her phone to avoid her own thoughts. Half an hour into the flight, turbulence hit. Light but sudden. Passengers gripped their armrests instinctively. The captain's calm voice came on. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. This will pass shortly." The plane jolted again, and a water bottle rolled off Karen's tray table, spilling onto her lap. She gasped, fumbling with napkins, clearly shaken. The woman next to her, maybe half her age, offered help. "It's okay," she said kindly. "I've got tissues." Karen gave a weak smile. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I hate turbulence." The woman smiled. Don't we all? Something in that small, normal moment, the kindness she didn't deserve but still received, shifted her expression. For the rest of the flight, she sat quietly, hands folded, gaze lost out the window she no longer demanded to have. When we landed, the captain's voice came over again. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Denver. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off." Karen stayed still. I thought she might bolt once the door opened, but she didn't. She turned, hesitated, then stood slowly, eyes flicking toward me. I met her gaze calmly. She took a breath. "Mr. Collins?" I nodded once. "Yes." Passengers behind her paused, pretending not to listen. Karen's voice trembled. "I wanted to apologize." I said nothing. "Just wait." She swallowed hard. "That day on the plane, I was horrible. I know that. I lost everything because of it. My job, my position, my reputation. But more than that, I lost who I thought I was." Her words came slowly, unpracticed. The kind of apology that wasn't for show, just raw, desperate honesty. "I've spent the last few months trying to be better," she said. "Volunteering. Therapy. I still get looks when people recognize me from that video. But I'm trying." Her eyes filled slightly. "You didn't humiliate me that day." "I did. And I'm sorry." For a moment, the cabin was silent except for the soft hum of cooling engines. I looked at her, not with anger, not with pity, just truth. "Karen," I said quietly, "everyone has turbulence. It's what you do after that defines your flight." She nodded, blinking back tears. "I'll remember that." I offered a faint smile. "Good. Then we're both cleared for takeoff." Her laugh was small, but genuine. "You still talk like a pilot." "Old habits," I said. The flight attendants began ushering people out. She stepped aside to let me pass. As I did, she whispered, "Thank you for not being cruel." I paused. Kindness doesn't need an audience. She nodded once, then disappeared into the crowd. Later, as I stood by the terminal window watching the ground crew prep for the next flight, Lily texted, "Safe landing." I smiled and typed back, "Yeah, even turbulence can turn into closure." She replied with a heart emoji. I slipped my phone into my pocket and looked back at the tarmac. A new flight was boarding, strangers stepping onto a metal bird, each with their own battles, hopes, and tempers. Maybe one of them would learn the same lesson. That control doesn't come from demanding respect. It comes from giving it freely, even to the people who spill coffee on you. As I walked toward the exit, I passed a newsstand. One magazine cover caught my eye. The Coffee Incident, 3 months later. How one flight changed the rules of in-flight behavior. I chuckled softly. Guess the skies remember too. The clerk noticed me staring. "You're that guy, right? The air marshal." I smiled. "Just a passenger now." He grinned. "Well, sir, that was one hell of a flight." I nodded. It was. Outside, the wind carried the faint roar of another jet taking off. Heavy, powerful, unstoppable. And I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes, justice doesn't need noise. It just needs altitude. 2 weeks later, I was home again. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen blinds, and the smell of Lily's cinnamon coffee filled the air. Normal, quiet, peaceful. I was scrolling through routine FAA reports when a headline caught my eye. Woman saves fellow passenger during medical emergency at Denver International. I almost scrolled past it until I saw the photo. It was blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. Karen. According to the article, a man had collapsed near the gate. Before anyone else reacted, she'd rushed forward, cleared space, and started CPR until medics arrived. Witnesses said she stayed calm, comforting the man's wife, even when the paramedics took over. The reporter had written one sentence that stuck in my mind. Ironically, passengers recognized her from a past viral incident. But today, they filmed something entirely different. Lily leaned over my shoulder, reading with me. "Wow," she said softly. "She really did change." I nodded. Maybe she just needed a second flight to find her balance. Lily smiled. "You gave her that runway." I laughed quietly. Maybe turbulence gives us all a second chance. That evening, I got an unexpected email. No subject line, just one sentence in the preview. "Thank you for not giving up on people like me." It was from Karen. She didn't write much, just enough. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I've started volunteering with flight crew stress programs. I talk to passengers who lose their tempers. I tell them how one cup of coffee almost cost me my humanity, and how one man's restraint gave me mine back." Lily read it and smiled. "That's your real viral moment right there." Weeks passed. Spring came early that year. Soft wind, brighter skies, calmer flights. But one afternoon at the airport, while waiting to board, I heard someone call my name. "Mr. Collins?" I turned. Karen stood there in a staff vest marked Aviation Volunteer, Passenger Relations. Different woman entirely, steady posture, kind eyes, peace where arrogance used to live. She smiled nervously. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me." I chuckled. "It's hard to forget turbulence like that." She laughed, genuinely this time. "Fair." We talked for a few minutes. She told me she was helping anxious travelers now, guiding them through boarding, calming disputes before they start. She said it felt like redemption every time someone thanked her. Before I boarded, she said quietly, "You were right that day. Everyone has turbulence." I nodded. "And you landed." She smiled. "Thanks to a good pilot." We shook hands, no bitterness left, just understanding. That night, somewhere above the clouds, I looked out my window. The stars shimmered against the curve of the wing, steady, silent, infinite. And I realized the lesson that every good story, every flight, and every act of restraint teaches. You don't fight arrogance by grounding people. You lift them high enough to see how small it really is. I closed my eyes, feeling the hum of the engines beneath me. And for the first time since that chaotic coffee spill, I felt the kind of peace you only earn after forgiving someone who never expected it. Airports are funny places. They see everything. Hellos, goodbyes, first chances, last words. Every day, thousands of people walk through those glass doors, believing they're heading somewhere new. But sometimes, the real destination isn't on a map. It's forgiveness. It's grace. It's finally letting go of what almost made you bitter. A month after the incident, I was walking through Terminal C at LAX when I saw something I didn't expect. A crowd gathered near the lounge windows. Cameras out. Smiles everywhere. In the center stood Karen. She wasn't yelling or lecturing or demanding anything this time. She was thanking someone, a young flight attendant who'd just been recognized for handling a difficult passenger with patience and kindness. Karen handed her a bouquet of white lilies, the same kind my wife loves, and said into the mic, "Compassion keeps the sky safe. We all lose altitude sometimes, but kindness brings us back to cruising speed." The room erupted in applause. Not for a celebrity, not for a hero, but for a woman who once represented everything wrong with entitlement, and now stood as proof that people can change. I stayed back, unnoticed, watching her shake hands and laugh easily with people who once might have feared her. When she finally spotted me across the room, she froze for just a moment, then smiled. No words, just a small, grateful nod. And that was enough. Because some stories don't need grand endings. Sometimes, a quiet nod between two people who learned something from each other is the perfect closure. On the flight home that night, Lily leaned her head on my shoulder, watching the city lights fade beneath us. "Do you ever think," she whispered, "that maybe people act cruel when they've forgotten how small the world really is?" I smiled. "Or when they forget the sky doesn't belong to them." She looked out the window, then back at me. "I'm glad you didn't fight back that day." I chuckled. "I wanted to. But your face, covered in coffee, kind of reminded me what mattered." She laughed softly, swatting my arm. "You mean my patience saved her?" "Yours," I said, "and a few airport security cameras." The pilot's voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our final descent. Please fasten your seatbelts." Lily looked out the window again, eyes reflecting the glow of city lights below. "Funny," she murmured. "The higher we go, the smaller everything looks. Even anger." I smiled, tracing my thumb across her hand. "Yeah, perspective's the best view in the sky." As the wheels touched down, I thought about everything that had happened. The coffee, the confrontation, the chaos, and the unexpected redemption that followed. We didn't just land safely. We landed better. Weeks later, at one of my airports, a new sign went up at the passenger lounge. Karen's idea. It read, "Respect is the only ticket that never expires." Below it was a small plaque with her name, Karen Brooks, Passenger Relations Volunteer. I smiled when I saw it for the first time. Because for all her turbulence, she'd finally learned to fly right. And me? I learned something too. That real authority isn't about how high you sit. It's about how steady you stand when someone else tries to shake you. That kindness, when used at the right altitude, can ground even the worst storms. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, an airliner soared overhead, its engines roaring like a heartbeat across the golden sky. I watched it disappear into the clouds and whispered, "Fly safe, Karen." Then I turned toward the runway, toward the next flight, the next lesson, the next story waiting to take off.